Welcome in to the Warchant.com report. I'm Jeff Cameron of 97.9 ESPN Radio. To my left, Ira Schoffel. To my right, Gene Williams, Warchant.com, of course. Florida State, Boston College, 8 o'clock. Primetime game, guys. Friday. Wow. Friday primetime game.
Take what we can get.
We'll take what we can get these days on ESPN. Florida State is 2-4. That's disappointing to say the least. This after the latest loss to Louisville. And frankly, I guess we can go big panel discussion here if you guys would like, Gene. There's talk of the need to overhaul coaching. There's talk about the disappointments of each of the last few years. They lost 3 games 2 years ago, 3 games last year, already 4 games this year. They're yet to win a home game. I'll begin with you. Carte blanche to say whatever you think is necessary here about what needs to happen here in terms of an overhaul, and what does Fisher need to do to change his process?
Yeah, I think it's more than just getting rid of a couple assistants. Obviously, that's going to help. You need some change on the staff. But I think he's got to look in the mirror at the overall process, this vaunted process he's talked about now for 10 years. Something didn't work in there. And I think one of the things he could do, if we're just going to throw something out there, he's got to learn, I don't know if he'll ever do it, is to delegate more. You know, it was different when he was 44 years old, when he got here in 2010, and he wanted to make sure he had a stamp on everything's in the right way. He's been here long enough. You still hear stories that he's there till 10:30 at night every day. He's 52 years old now. I get it. I appreciate the effort. But, man, at some point you got to give some of this stuff up, whether it's running the offense, the play calling. You know, I know he has this vision. He's the best play caller there is out there, and that's fine. You're really good at that. I'm not disputing that. But sometimes you got to give something up to help the greater whole. I think overseeing the whole program, whether that's dealing with the boosters, the administration, overseeing everything, he needs to kind of do that a little bit more. So, yeah, I would like to see him, especially when it comes to delegating, adjust his style quite a bit.
It's a very difficult task for coaches who've had as much success as he's had. What else would you like to see Jimbo Fisher do, Ira?
Well, I do think evaluating the coaching staff is a big part of it. I think that really, other than maybe a couple of coaches like Odell Higgins and Tim Brewster, really any other coach on this staff, I think, has to, if I'm Jimbo Fisher, I'm making them make a case to me of why they should return next season, because basically every other part of the team is underperformed, I think. And so I think that's a big part of it. But then, as Gene said, a lot of it is Jimbo needs to reflect on himself, and the process can change from time to time. I think that's one thing that you see about great coaches that have done it over a long period of time. I guarantee you Nick Saban doesn't operate exactly the same way today as he did 10 years ago or 15 years ago. You have to change. You have to change the message. That helps the players. I just think there's something stale there, and I think Jimbo needs to look at the entire operation.
Infinitely frustrating. And I think the most frustrating aspect of all of this is that whatever he does to make changes in the offseason, whether that's a huge overhaul or a minor one, both with the coaching staff and or the process, Gene, it's stuff that can't be done until the off season. So here we sit with a bunch of football games still to play in the midst of a 2-4 campaign where people are wondering about historic streaks coming to an end. And yet every week, while we sound like a broken record that changes have to be made, what else can you talk about other than the loss itself or the reasons and the hows and the whys? But things can't be fixed until we get to this off season. And in the meantime, we got to play football games. I guess I could ask, what can be fixed, Gene, in the interim at this point? I mean, is there something that you think in season what can and can't be fixed?
Well, just to talk about the offense a little bit here. I mean, first of all, I don't know how much you can really do there because you've been dealt a crappy hand. Let's face it. I mean, you lose your starting quarterback in the first game. You don't have any depth there. You're starting a freshman. Then let's lose our best offensive lineman in Landon Dickerson. And let's go ahead and lose. Let's see, the last few weeks you've lost your number 2 wide receiver. Your number 1 wide receiver is not at 100%.
Fitzpatrick this week at running back.
Yeah, you lose your starting running back. At the beginning, we forget about Devontae Phillips was suspended at the beginning of the year. So you're out with him. George Campbell in and out of the lineup the whole time. So, I mean, there's so much you've had happen to you that it really kind of ties your hands a little bit in how much better you can get. But that being said, I think there's some things we can do. Jimbo Fisher, I think, tough for him to simplify things even more. You know, we can go to the example of the Louisville game. Why are you running with 2 freshmen in the backfield? Are you running that zone read type of play? You could have just done a simple run 3 times. One of the times to be conservative might have been then. And I know what he was thinking, X's and O's. That's a great call, X's and O's, because he was going to take off and maybe even score on that play. But sometimes you got to look beyond that and just look at the game as a whole, simplify things down for your freshmen, put them in a position, don't let something like that happen. So I think simplifying things a little bit. And I'd say loosen up with some of the wide receivers a little bit. You're going to have to play some of these freshmen. He seems very hesitant to put those guys out there. That's been a recurring theme with him. He wants to put the more experience. Come on. Throwing the post route to Jared Jackson, that just wasn't what you do. I mean, tell me Tameron Terry is not out there in that play. He can run a post. He's done that in high school before. I don't like some of that, too. I think he's got to loosen up in that aspect.
What would you add to that, Ira?
Yeah, I think offensively, I'd go back to the identity they talked about 2 games ago and then kind of disappeared against Louisville. I mean, even though you lost Jaquez Patrick, that may seem like an odd time to bring that up. But I just think even with Cam Akers, the other running backs they have, Ryan Green, Amir Rasul, Kalen Laybourne, they've got plenty of running backs. This offensive line run blocks pretty well. And I think you need to take a little bit of pressure off of James Blackman. James Blackman, I think Jimbo's kind of gotten a little false insecurity with how well James Blackman has picked things up as a true freshman. He is doing really well. I think he's ahead of the curve. But he's also had like 6 or 7 turnovers in the last 3 weeks. I think he needs to back off him a little bit, put more on that running game, which I think he should have done against Louisville, and do that going forward.
There were 2 obvious moments where it looked like Florida State had discovered an identity. The Miami game, also the Duke game, running the football, throwing off a play action. They had established the run game. They were being very physical, under center. And he went away from it this past week, and I think most people were left incredulous that you're in the shotgun as often as Florida State was this past weekend.
Again, going back to my point, why do you think he did that? He did that because Louisville dared him to do that. They brought everybody up to the line, and they dared him to throw the football. But sometimes, you got to look at the greater thing. You can't always go on X's and O's, go, this is best. Sometimes you got to protect your quarterback, even though you may have a harder time running than you would throwing the football, even though you got that one-on-one coverage or you got the setup you like in the secondary. Sometimes you just go with what is better for your quarterback.
All right, so it's a short week, not an ideal time to come off a short week with all these injuries and obviously some of the emotional wear and tear of losing football games. We'll preview that, talk about Boston College, who's gotten hot as of late as well. That's next on the Warchant.com report. Welcome back to the Warchant.com report. Florida State is playing on a short week. There are some challenges to that, like the fact that they were practicing on Sunday well into the evening, and the fact that Boston College is usually a very physical team. So you get a quick turnaround in a road game, with a team that's gaining confidence. Boston College runs the football, and they do it with an A.J. Dillon who's 6 feet tall, 245 pounds as a freshman, not afraid to put his head in there. And that's my worry going into this football game, because defensively, run fits are about sacrifice, about putting your body in there for the greater good. Jimbo Fisher talking about this improved Boston College offense here.
Jimbo, what in the world's gone on with Boston College's offense the last 2 weeks? You look at these scores, and they don't look like Boston College scores.
The
what have they
quarterback's
done?
gotten better, and the quarterback runs and throws. They're running the football against the Louisville team was 14-7 with 2 minutes to go in the half. You know what I mean? And they broke a run. And in the second half, they got control and got some they've got confidence, got over that hump. You know what I'm saying? And made plays and done well. And then this week, they played on the road at Virginia and did very well. That's the thing. They played both those games on the road. And they weren't even home games. But they're running the football. The quarterback's doing a much better job, I think, man. He's just making good decisions, good throws. He's growing up, getting better. He's athletic, hard to get on the ground. The backs, you got to respect. And then I say the diversity they create with all the, 2 tights, 3 tights, and all that stuff and what they do. And they've done a really good job.
Jimbo Fisher on Boston College's offense and the resurgence of a season that looked awry for them. I guess we look now at the short week, guys. I'll start with Eugene. This is not ideal.
I don't know if there's any ideal time for this team to play the way they've been playing. Yeah, I don't know. You could play them on a Sunday morning. I don't know if it would make any difference. But no, it obviously is a tough thing. FSU, I looked this up all the time. In regular season, Friday night games, 13-12. So it's obviously not a great thing. And we know that the stats. Anytime you go on a road game on a short week, when the home team is the underdog, it goes through the roof in terms of the favored team that goes on the road losing games. So you don't like it for that. Now you're down another starter. You're coming off another last-second emotional loss in a game you really thought you had won. So it doesn't look good. This is one of those little streaks that have gone on. Jimbo Fisher 7-0 against BC, so it could be another one of these streaks we keep talking about that comes to an end this week.
Or he could go to 8-0.
He could. Anything's possible.
How good is Boston College's offense? It's weird. You look 45 points against Louisville. The blueprint was laid out there for you if you wanted to use it, run the football. They scored 41 against Virginia, who was playing quite well prior to that game. And that game was at Virginia. So was the game against Louisville, at Louisville. They've latched on to something, but on the season, the statistics aren't that impressive.
Yeah, can you imagine Virginia's fans? They're 5-1 going into that game.
Yeah,
they're
crazy.
at home against the Boston College team. They did beat Louisville, but that game kind of felt fluky because they came back. And then it was 24-0 early in the second quarter. Boston College just demolished Virginia, and they played really well the last few weeks. I think it's a combination of things. I think they found that their identity. They're putting up over the last couple of weeks over 500 yards of offense against those teams. They've run it well. They're going to set up the play action with the run, but they do a great job with misdirection. We think back to some of those Adazio teams through the years that FSU's played against. back when he was at Florida and also at Boston College, the throwbacks, the tight end, things like that. They'll do a lot of trickeration, a lot of eye candy, the unbalanced lines. They do a lot of things to really keep a defense off balance. And this defense has not adjusted well to those types of things. I think that's the challenge. Gene talked about the short week. There are so many things working against FSU in this situation. I just think the style that Boston College plays, the physicality for a defense that hasn't seemed to really want that right now. And then you go into, and you talk about the eye candy and the trickeration and things like that have really baffled this defense. So I just think Boston College has played really well the last couple weeks, and I think it may continue this week offensively.
Well, and it's scary, too, because now they believe. And Adazio's the kind of coach that can get kids fired up. They'll run through a wall for them, overachieve. I mean, here's the guy that's taken BC to a bowl 3 of the last 4 years. They don't have a ton of talent. That Landry kid, I know you're going to talk about it momentarily. They do have talent there, but now they believe, and they've latched on to something, and they're physical, and they have an identity, and that's what you worry about. Let's look at this BC defense. You know, on the surface, Gene, you look at this team, they give up 34 points to Wake Forest. They give up 49 points to Notre Dame. They give up 34 points to Clemson. They give up 42 points in a win against Louisville. They've had their moments where they've given up a ton of points, and yet I don't think any of us really believe Florida State's going to go in there and light up the scoreboard. Talk about this defense.
Well, all those teams you mentioned have much better offenses than Florida State, so I mean that's a big thing. It's like you said, it's weird statistically. You go their pass efficiency defense, it's number 8. You go the rush defense, it's 114. I don't know if I've seen a team this season with that much disparity between the two. But all being said, this really comes down to a couple things when you get just look at something specific at Boston College, and that is their defensive ends. Now, both of them. You know, Jimbo Fisher mentioned that during the press conference. Zach Allen, 285 pounds, he leads them in tackles. When do you see a defensive end lead a defense in tackles? But that's a good thing. If one of your defensive linemen's leading you in tackles, that's a very good sign. But really the guy you got to watch out, because Florida State's had nightmares with elite defensive ends this season. I don't need to tell people about Bradley Chubb or Duke Ejiofor from Wake Forest, how well they played. Well, they got one of those guys here in Harold Landry. A guy who came back. He was a borderline first-round pick in last year's draft. Surprised people by coming back for his senior season. One of the mock drafts has him all the way at number 8 overall in the draft. That's a little bit scary, especially when you got, remember, Florida State is now starting Ball out there at tackle, and he's struggled quite a bit. And again, he's a redshirt freshman. He's going to have his struggles. But if he gets some matchups with here, I think this is where you're going to take Ryan Izzo maybe taken out of the game quite a bit, because he's going to have to be there to help in terms of that pass protection there. So it is a little scary. He's got 26 career sacks. He's a guy that's going to be playing in the league. He's going to be really good there. And Florida State, frankly, has not matched up well against those guys. So that's one of the things that jumps out to me that's really scary about this matchup.
Yeah, I think you got to line up and run the ball, though, and you have to be committed to it early and often. And I think you got to go back to simplifying things. And listen, just understand that you're going to be in a knockdown, drag-out. It sounds like to me, guys, what we're both describing, what you guys are describing on both sides of the ball, I should say, there better be some walk to. Because BC is going to come with great intensity. They're going to believe they can win the football game, and they're going to treat this like a Super Bowl. And if Florida State, and there's a physical element to this too, on both sides, if Florida State doesn't match that intensity, doesn't feel compelled to sacrifice their body in the run fits and do the things for other people, then you're going to have a long night on your hand. We've seen BC do this to folks. Remember back to Boston College putting over 500 yards rushing against Southern Cal a few years ago. I mean, we've seen some big-name teams go in there, and it's a horror story on a Friday night.
If you don't want to be there, it can be bad news.
It can be bad news.
And we haven't seen that from this FSU defense. This FSU defense hasn't quit. This hasn't been just a situation where they haven't tried. But if you're waiting for that opportunity on a short week after you just fall to 2-4 and everything you were kind of hoping for the season has gone out the window, you know, it's going to take a lot of resolve for these players and this coaching staff. And I think you saw Jimbo this week take a little bit of a lighter tone, talk about going back to basics. I think they're trying to figure out what button to push to salvage this week, because this is going to be a challenging week.
Well, we'll tell you about where you can watch the game watching parties throughout the country, and the Warchant.com game day page and all that when we come back, plus preview keys to the game, keys to victory, and give you our picks as well. That's next on the Warchant.com report. Welcome back to the Warchant.com report. By the way, go to the Warchant.com page for it's game day page, I should say, for a complete list of game watching locations throughout the country. You'd think by now I just know that and say it, but I always look down. I'm so dependent on this sheet. Good Lord. All right, should Florida State make up the Louisiana-Monroe game? We may not need to. If you're not bowl eligible, say in a couple of weeks where you've already...
need to make the decision before then, aren't you?
Probably.
I don't think you're going to know. You can't wait till the Florida game and go, oh, you know what, we're good.
I don't know. ULM, they're wanting that check. And the only way they get that check is if the game is played. So I think you could call them on that Thursday.
You might have the cards, the upper hand,
you
right?
call them that Thursday and say, hey, be here Saturday to pick up your check. I think they'll show up.
What are the benefits?
Well, I mean, the biggest one is the additional practice time. I mean, that's when you hear coaches all the time talking about getting all those extra practices in. And at this point, let's face it, there's a lot of seniors or veterans on that defensive side of the ball that are going to be effectively checked out. They're going to get their paycheck in the NFL, so it's a great opportunity to get those young guys extra practice time, get them also in that bowl game. Let's get all those young guys and get them out there some real experience. So I mean, that would be big. I think it's a chance, the chance for those guys to get in the bowl streak. I mean, screw the NCAA. FSU has a 35-year bowl streak. I think every fan would like to keep that alive. So why not? That game may be right now. It looks like that game may be the difference between getting in a bowl or not.
If you lose to Boston College, it may be a moot point.
Well,
but also, true. I would say this. The bad part of it is the optics in that stadium. What do you think, 30,000, 40,000 people at that game?
They're talking about announced or actual.
Man.
There's a lot of financial reasons I think FSU would like to play the game because they do have some responsibilities with the Champions Club ticket buyers and some things like that. So there's some reasons, some incentives for FSU to play the game. I originally thought at the time they should have announced it right away so the optics wouldn't look so bad.
Yeah.
Because any point now,
it's going to look like you were doing it to get bowl eligible.
To get bowl eligible.
Sure.
But like you said, if you lose Boston College, it may be a moot point.
Tough times, folks. Tough times when these are the conversations we're having. Now let's get into the keys to victory, and I've got a really simple one. I want to hear yours.
What's that?
Keys to victory.
Well, the simple, establish the run. You guys have said it. We've all parroted that. I mean, absolutely. If you can run the ball effectively in this game, like you showed until last week, and you commit to the run, that solves a lot of issues. So I think that's going to be pretty good. When Blackman does have to pass, don't let Landry just beat him up. Do something. Have a chip on him. Put an extra guy in there. Just account for him. And I'd say don't fall for all the eye candy. I mean, BC, you're going to make them at least earn some of those points. They're going to do some trickeration on you. Just stay home. The eye discipline Jimbo Fisher talks about, that's going to be huge.
Mine's just intensity. Match intensity. Yeah. Show a physical element to defense in the run game, that it's not going to be an easy day at the park and they're going to have to earn it. And then from there, your talent should take over. But that's easier said than done for a team whose team morale has to be pretty low right about now.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to have to do some things different than they've done all year, really, to be honest. I just think the defense, the concern I have is the throwbacks, the misdirection plays, things like that. Just competing against the run will be hard enough, but then playing smart, again, on a short week, I just think that it's hard to come up with keys to victory because I don't see those things happening. I really don't.
I think he's hinting,
So I think the biggest thing, the biggest advice I would have would be to take the pressure off of James Blackman. I think Landry, if you remember last year, what Landry did to Brock Rubel.
Oh.
I mean.
Was it the game up there, too?
Yeah, he's
just abused.
He's phenomenal. Yeah. So they got to take the pressure off of Blackman in that offensive line and really run the ball, as you guys said.
I think I know where you're going with this, Ira. It is time to make our picks. And by the way, none better than Ira Schoffel last week, 7-0. He bests my 6-1. What'd you do?
5-2, which is usually not bad, but compared to these guys, compared to these Vegas guys over here.
Oh, man, 7-0. Can we keep it rolling? I think I know who you're going with the BC game, but let's start with Louisville -3 at Wake Forest.
Anyone? Bueller?
You go Gene first.
It doesn't really matter.
No, he threw you off your game.
7-0, man.
Yeah, you're the go-to.
You can't handle adversity? It's like we're playing 21 and we're checking. I rolled you back the ball. You can't. Now you know what to do.
I like Louisville in this game. I think they're primed for a drop off after the big Florida State win that they got over the 2-4 Knowles. But I just think the athletes are going to have a tough time for Wake Forest keeping up with Lamar Jackson.
I think these two teams are terrible. Wake Forest, Louisville should have gotten blown out by Florida State. Just watching the game, looking at that team, they got one good player. Sorry, Louisville, but you're better than us, obviously. I'll take Louisville -3, I guess.
I'll go with Wake just because I think they say, well, look, they're pretty well coached. And I think they go, look, all you got to do is put everybody on Lamar Jackson. If someone else beats us, fine. And they've just been very well coached all season. I think a good, well-coached team can beat Louisville.
Georgia Tech is at Clemson. Clemson's given 14.5 points here. Who you got?
Oh,
hook
man.
scares you. I know.
Yeah, I hate seeing that hook because I'm
hook.
thinking this is a 2-touchdown game because Tech can keep you, keep you
Tech's a
honest
decent
there.
little team.
But I'll say one thing: Clemson's got that stout defensive front, so I don't think Paul Johnson's always going to do what it normally does and just rack up ridiculous rushing yards. And if you can keep them some 3-and-outs, Clemson will roll. So I got to take Clemson in this one, the bounce back game with the off week.
Yeah, I'm not sure how quickly they're going to bounce back after their long winning streak, winning the national title, losing that game. I think Georgia Tech might throw a little bit of a scare into them, but Clemson will pull it out, but I don't think they're going to cover.
I'll take Georgia Tech getting 14.5. So, Gene, you're on an island both times. Oklahoma State is giving 7 at West Virginia. Ryan Kelly loves him some Oklahoma State. Led to my only loss last week because I believed in him and the Pokes. Not going to do it this time around. I'm kind of tempted to go, well, no, I'll take Oklahoma State and give 7. I shouldn't have done it. I wish I hadn't done it. Who you got?
I'm with you. I'm taking the Cowboys.
Okay,
we're unanimous on that one.
All right,
Brian's got us all influenced.
No, North Carolina State's at Notre Dame. Notre Dame is given 7.5. I've been on this Notre Dame team all year long. I've been very impressed with the fact that they've run the football. They play very good defense. They're committed to it. They're physical. By the way, if you're looking for a program that did a major overhaul, it would be Notre Dame. Brian Kelly brought in 17 new assistants, fired as offensive and defenve coordinator in the offseason.
9. That's amazing.
It's crazy. He did 17 new personnel people. It's amazing. And he also changed himself, apparently, in his diet and everything else. The guy's like a new guy. And they're winning. And they went 4-8 a year ago. So it can't be done. It's hopeful. Who you got?
I think NC State ought to be undefeated right now. I mean, they blew that South Carolina game. I think they've learned from that. I think that defense is really good. They're going to keep this game close. I'm not sure they win, but I don't like that hook on the end of the touchdown, so go ahead and give me the Wolfpack.
Good game.
I think it should be a good game, but I'm going to take Notre Dame. I like that.
I'm going to take Notre Dame as well, although I can understand why Gene did what he did there. That's not a game I'll be playing in my personal life. Okay. Penn State's at Ohio State. Ohio State is giving 6.
That's an interesting line, huh?
Yeah,
Vegas doesn't believe in Penn State.
I don't know. I mean, I guess they didn't. I was pretty. I thought Penn State. We all thought Penn State was going to blow out Michigan last week, and they did. They looked as good, if not better, than we thought they were. I just am not convinced Ohio State when they played only one team with a pulse this year, and they got blown out at home against Oklahoma. So I ain't buying it right now. I think they even blow out the weak team. So give me Penn State. I think they're for real.
I'm worried about this, but I'm going to take Penn State. But that number concerns me. I feel like there's a reason Ohio State's favored by 6.
I've got Ohio State minus 6 there. Florida is going against Georgia. Georgia's given the 14. And, folks, this is rare we say it. I think this is going to be unanimous Georgia, unanimous given the 14.
Well, what's the thing about when a team has a streak in rivalries, how are they broken? They're always broken by a blowout. You hardly have a resounding
right?
So, I mean, Florida's obviously owned Georgia as of late. Florida's reeling. Georgia's rolling. They're going to be motivated for this game. Yeah, I think this is a blowout by Georgia. Give me them all.
How does Florida keep this close?
What a wreck is going on in Gainesville.
I mean, how? But they went 4-8 and hung in there with Georgia. Lost that year, but I do believe that.
But that team was better than this team.
Yeah, they're 2-4. They're bad on both sides of the ball. And then you add in your head coach now says he's getting death throats, but then can't give any explanations for what he's talking about. So I think Georgia's going to rout.
Okay, so we've got Georgia across the board, and finally that leads us to FSU giving 3. Ira's taking BC. Who you got?
I felt bad about taking FSU last week because I said, you know what, I just don't feel. I'm like,
they should have won the game.
They should have, but I'm like, somehow they're going to find a way to lose the game because there's always that in the back of your mind. I mean, really, if they went and scored a touchdown at the end, did you have any doubt that Louisville would have driven down the field with 2 minutes left and tied the game?
Yeah, okay.
So I've got to take BC. And again, from you guys, you made a good points about the want to. I just don't know after a short week going up there. BC's rolling. I just don't see you're going to have the want to on both sides of the ball. So they're going to be 2-5.
2-5.
That's what I got.
2-5. I'll take Boston College. I don't want to. But
it's not really a vote for Boston College as much as
it's more a vote about whether or not they choose to be there. Good work, Ryan Kelly. For Ira Schoffel and Gene Williams, I'm Jeff Cameron. Thanks so much for listening and watching, everybody. We'll see you next time on the Warchant.com Report.